Black man's life fell apart. Then a 1937 Cadillac uncovered a shocking secret. Marcus Ellison, a black man, once stood at the very top. He had wealth, power, and a name that carried weight in every boardroom. But in one brutal twist, it was all ripped away. His wife leveled accusations that painted him as violent, a claim Marcus swore was false. Yet the world didn't wait for proof. Headlines screamed monster, investors vanished, and his empire collapsed overnight. The man who once commanded respect was now reduced to whispers and side glances on the street. With only $500 left to his name, Marcus stumbled upon a relic, a battered 1937 Cadillac, its paint chipped, its windows cracked, abandoned on a forgotten lot. He handed over every last bill he had and claimed the rusting car, not as a vehicle, but as his shelter. Mocked by strangers who muttered his name like a curse, Marcus now slept where the leather was torn and the silence was suffocating. As the story unfolds, don't forget to subscribe. Your support keeps these powerful stories alive. But one night, as he shifted in the back seat, his hand brushed against something hidden deep within the cracked upholstery. His fingers hit metal aglint buried in the dark. That small discovery would unlock a secret fortune, ignite a path back to power, and expose the lies that had destroyed him. Marcus Ellison hadn't always lived in silence. Once, reporters chased him for interviews. Once, his footsteps echoed through a mansion that overlooked the city skyline. His pride was loud. But ruin? Ruin crept in quietly. It began with the woman who had stood beside him at every gala, smiling in every magazine spread. When their marriage fell apart, she carried with her a story of bruises and rage claims that spread like wildfire. Marcus denied them, but no one cared. Friends stopped answering his calls. Investors pulled their money. Even the doorman at his own office refused to meet his eyes. Courtrooms turned him into a spectacle, and Marcus into the villain everyone wanted to see fall. One by one, the homes, the cars, the bank accounts gone. All that remained was a cardboard box filled with bills, a watch worth less than its memory, and a slip confirming just $500 left in his account. When he walked the city streets, strangers whispered, "Isn't that him? The one from the headlines? I used to admire that man." Their judgment cut deeper than any loss. But fate has a cruel sense of humor. That same week, in a back alley lined with rusting cars, Marcus saw the Cadillac, a forgotten classic marked with a crooked sign, "For sale $500. It was all he had left. By sundown, the man once draped in tailored suits and champagne toasts was sleeping in a car that smelled of dust and decay. Inside, the silence pressed heavy on him. He stared up at the cracked roof and whispered, This is all that's left." And outside, the world kept moving, as if Marcus Ellison, black man, had never existed at all. Life inside the Cadillac was nothing close to glamorous. But within its torn leather seats lay a secret that would change everything. The first nights inside the Cadillac were brutal. What once symbolized elegance now felt like punishment. The cracked seats dug into Marcus's back like slabs of stone, and the draft that seeped through broken windows carried a bitter chill that rattled with every passing truck. He rolled up his only blazer into a pillow, the same one once tailored in Milan, now reeking of gasoline and sweat. Days blurred into labor. Marcus rose before sunrise, slipping quietly into jobs no one else wanted. At the docks, he hauled crates until his palms split open. In dingy workshops, he swept floors while mechanics smirked and muttered behind his back. One afternoon, while wiping grease from his hands, he overheard two men leaning against a tool chest. "That guy looks familiar," one said. "Yeah, used to be some big shot. Heard his wife took him for everything. Guess he wasn't untouchable after all." Their laughter wasn't cruel. It was worse, casual, as if his ruin was nothing more than gossip to pass the time. Marcus said nothing. He clenched the rag until his knuckles ached, then walked away. but their words clung to him like damp clothes he couldn't peel off. At night, he returned to the Cadillac. Sometimes kids hurled rocks at the hood, daring each other to disturb the homeless man's car. Other nights, Marcus sat in silence, staring at the streak of headlights across the highway, wondering if anyone behind the wheel still remembered the man he used to be. Loneliness weighed heavier than hunger. Some nights he gripped the steering wheel so hard his hands trembled, pretending just for a moment that he still controlled something, anything. But deep beneath the shame, a spark refused to die. Every insult, every mocking laugh, every shiver in the cold whispered the same thing: "You're not done yet." Survival became his discipline. One day at a time, he endured. But despair lurked close, ready to swallow him whole. One evening, his head slumped against the window, breath fogging the glass. Across the street, his ex-wife's face lit up a television in a shop window. She smiled brightly, hailed as a survivor, while the headline flashed: "Empowered after abuse, her story of triumph." Marcus's chest tightened, but he stayed silent. Rock bottom wasn't a place. It was a silence so suffocating it pressed into your skull, a weight so steady it curved your spine. And Marcus Ellison, once a man larger than life, was now learning to exist inside it. Then came a gray afternoon. The sky hung heavy, the air damp with the smell of coming rain. Marcus dragged himself back to the Cadillac after another grueling shift, his shirt soaked with grime and sweat. He dropped into the back seat, too exhausted to even shut the door. The old leather groaned beneath him, split open in scars of foam. For weeks he'd felt something hard pressing through the seat, a lump buried deep inside. That evening, with nothing else to occupy his mind, Marcus tugged at the seam. At first, the fabric resisted. The stitches, though frayed, clung stubbornly. He worked his fingers in, nails scraping rough edges, until the material finally tore. Something slid loose with a dull thud. Wrapped in a faded cloth, the object was dense and unfamiliar. Its weight pulled heavily in his palm. Marcus unfolded the cloth carefully, almost reverently. Inside lay a piece of metal yellowed, dulled by dust. His brows knit in confusion as he stared, not yet realizing that this strange discovery was the first crack in the wall of his despair. At first, Marcus thought it was nothing, just brass, maybe copper, some worthless scrap. But as he rubbed the lump of metal against his sleeve, the dull surface caught the light and refused to let it go. His breath stalled. Gold. The word pulsed in his mind like a heartbeat, ridiculous, impossible. He even laughed, a dry, bitter sound echoing in the hollow Cadillac. Yeah, right. Gold in this wreck. But curiosity gnawed at him. The next morning, he walked to a small pawn shop tucked between shuttered stores. A bell jingled overhead as he stepped inside. The air smelled of old wood and metal polish. Behind the counter, a gray-bearded shopkeeper with sharp, watchful eyes took the piece from Marcus without a word. He tested it on a stone, peered through his glasses, then looked Marcus dead in the eye. "Where'd you get this?" Marcus hesitated. "Does it matter?" The man's expression shifted, voice dropping lower. "Son, this isn't brass. This is gold, real, pure." The words hit Marcus harder than any insult ever had. For a second, he thought it was another cruel joke at his expense. But when the shopkeeper placed the piece on the scale and the numbers lit up, the truth gleamed back at him undeniable. Marcus's hands trembled as he rewrapped the metal. The man leaned in, his voice almost a whisper. "That old car of yours could have belonged to a miner. They hid things away where no one would ever think to look. Maybe you just stumbled onto something big." Marcus stepped back out into the chaos of the street, clutching the bundle against his chest. The traffic roared around him, but he barely heard it. His eyes locked on the Cadillac across the block. For the first time, he didn't see a coffin of failure. He saw a vault, a chance, maybe even salvation. Deep inside, a voice he thought he'd lost whispered back to life, "You still have a future." He didn't make the mistake of selling it all at once. That would have drawn too much attention. Instead, Marcus sold small pieces at different shops, moving carefully, always cautious. The cash wasn't staggering, but it was enough to breathe again. Enough to take the first step. That step came in the form of a shuttered repair shop on the edge of the city. To everyone else, it was worthless peeling paint, a leaking roof, tools rusting in dust. But Marcus saw what he had always seen: potential. Years ago, he'd built empires out of scraps. Why couldn't he do it again? He worked alone at first. Days bled into nights as he patched crumbling walls, scrubbed away oil stains, and fixed engines with the same hands that had once signed million-dollar contracts. Some customers who wandered in squinted, recognition flickering in their eyes. "Isn't that Marcus Ellison?" One woman whispered as he tightened a belt under her hood. "No," another said. "He's finished." But when the engine roared back to life beneath his touch, doubt crept into their voices. Slowly, word began to spread. First out of curiosity, then trust. Marcus treated every repair like it mattered, every handshake like a promise. He no longer carried himself like the untouchable millionaire he once was. He carried himself like a man who had lost everything and was rebuilding, bolt by bolt. With steady income flowing in, Marcus invested carefully in small logistics contracts. Nothing flashy, just moving goods from one warehouse to another. But each deal stacked on a last like bricks, laid in a new foundation. And soon, the very investors who had once abandoned him began circling again, sniffing out the scent of opportunity. Marcus never turned away the investors who came crawling back, but he also never forgot the ones who had vanished when his world collapsed. 2 years slipped by, and his name slowly crept back into business circles, not as yesterday's scandal, but as the man who had risen from the ashes. He stood taller now, his strength not built on wealth, but on survival. Every scar, every sleepless night, every insult endured had carved a different kind of power into him. And as his empire quietly rebuilt, rumors began swirling about his ex-wife. Reports claimed court records had leaked. Former friends of hers allegedly confessed to helping spread false stories. Photos began surfacing, exposed as doctored. Evidence once used against Marcus was being questioned, with whispers that it had all been fabricated. The woman once hailed as a brave survivor was now being painted in some corners as the architect of his destruction. Marcus didn't chase those headlines. He didn't need to. His focus was elsewhere on restoring the Cadillac that had once been his coffin. He poured money and care into every detail. Chrome polished until it gleamed like liquid light. Leather seats restitched with precision. The body reborn into brilliance. That car, once a refuge of despair, became his monument to resilience. One evening, Marcus stood beside it, running his hand across the hood as the city lights reflected perfectly in its flawless paint. A smile touched his face, not the arrogant grin of victory, but a quiet smile of peace. Because his rise had never been about proving others wrong. It was about proving to himself that he had never been finished. The night of the gala felt like stepping into a dream Marcus once thought he'd lost forever. Cameras flashed as luxury cars lined the street. Diamonds glittered, laughter filled the air, but nothing stole attention like the 1937 Cadillac purring to a stop at the entrance. When Marcus stepped out in a tailored black suit, polished shoes catching the chandelier glow, the whispers changed. For years, his name had been laced with pity and disdain. Tonight, all replaced them. Is that Marcus Ellison? Thought he was done for. He looked stronger than ever. Inside the ballroom, conversations hushed as eyes followed him across the marble floor. And then she appeared. His ex-wife, draped in silk, her smile sharp as glass. But the moment her eyes locked onto his, the mask cracked. Once she had stood on stages, celebrated as the survivor of a so-called monster. Now her reputation was unraveling. Headlines questioning her stories, sponsors pulling away, colleagues withdrawing their support. Marcus didn't confront her. He didn't need to. He simply lifted his glass when their eyes met, a silent reminder that truth always finds its moment. By the end of the night, the crowd surrounded him, handshakes, offers, praise, partnerships. But Marcus stayed grounded. His true victory wasn't the money, nor the redemption in the eyes of others. It was knowing he had survived the silence, the hunger, the humiliation, and still found the strength to rise again. Later, he drove the Cadillac home under a canopy of city lights, the engine humming like a crown reclaimed. The same car that had cradled his darkest nights now carried him forward into triumph. Marcus Ellison had once been stripped of everything. Yet what he uncovered beneath those old leather seats didn't just restore his fortune, it rebuilt the man himself. His story stands as proof that even when life buries you in lies and ruin, resilience can unearth gold where no one else dares to look. And now I'll leave you with this. If you were in Marcus's place, what would you have done? Let us know in the comments, and if this story moved you, make sure to subscribe for more tales of downfall, redemption, and ultimate triumph.